Hello everybody and welcome to Yarn of a Kind. My name is Alicia and this week I thought I was gonna do a crochet vlog, but it's already Thursday and I'm only just starting the vlog. You can't start a crochet vlog on a Thursday, can you? So I think it's gonna be spilling over into next week, but the theme for this week is crochet plants. So earlier this week, I sat down and looked through my crochet pattern database and I identified a bunch of plant amigurumi patterns that I wanted to make. And you're gonna see what they are later on as we go along. But the first one that I wanted to make was this Crocus amigurumi. Here's what it looks like. And I just think that it's so pretty. The colors are absolutely gorgeous. So let me show you what I've done so far. There are quite a few parts in this pattern and I haven't quite finished making all the parts yet, but what I have is the bulb and the stem, and these are crocheted directly together. You start with the bulb and then you change color to green and then crochet the stem. Next, I made the pot and this fits really nicely into the pot. I should say that I did try to make this amigurumi a bit smaller than the pattern indicates, so I only increased up to 30 single crochets for the bulb and only up to 36 single crochets for the pot. So it's a bit smaller than what it would be if I followed the pattern exactly. I've also made the 3 leaves, but they're quite floppy and I'm not sure how it's going to look when I sew it onto the amigurumi, but we'll deal with that issue when we come to it. I've made 3 out of the 6 petals that I need, so I need to make 3 more of these and then the stamen, and then I think I might be close to being done with this. So I'm gonna continue working on the petals and then I'll report back again after I've made some progress. So I've run into a bit of a difficulty with the assembly part, or I would say even before the assembly part. Making this second part of the stamen was a little tricky, but I looked to the comments section as usual and then found the correction. So I eventually figured out the second part of the stamen, but now I'm looking at the assembly section and it says to sew the stamens together, placing second part. Oh, okay, now I get it. This is the first part of the stamen, these 3 things, and then this is the second part. And initially when they said place the second part in the middle of the first one, I thought that they were just referring to the second part in this first part. Okay, but anyway, right, so I'm gonna place the second part into the first part and it's gonna be sewn together. Okay, I get it now. I get it now. It's fine. Let's proceed. So I have somehow managed to sew the stamen onto the stem, and here's what it's looking like at the moment. I don't know, throughout this whole process, I was just feeling that using chenille yarn might not have been the best choice for this project because I'm using toucan yarn and it keeps shedding, which really frustrates me, and it's a bit fiddly. I feel like if I use cotton yarn, it might have been able to hold the shape and the structure a little bit better, but we're here and we're just gonna continue using chenille yarn. The next step is going to be sewing the petals on, and I actually need to weave in all the ends first. I'm so mortified to be saying this, but it is now a week and a half later after that Thursday. That was the worst fall start to a video ever. I ended up getting caught up with so many other things. That weekend itself, I went to Belgium, and then last week I had a couple of pattern tests to complete as well as some commission projects. So if you watch my previous video, you know that I have put myself on a pattern testing ban, and I'm basically not going to be allowing myself to apply for pattern tests for a few weeks at least, and that is so that I can actually finish this video, which I am really sorry has been so delayed. So please hold me accountable to that, and you can feel free to reprimand me if you see me applying to any pattern tests on Instagram. But to be honest, it has not been easy resisting applying to pattern tests because I love pattern tests and there have been so many good ones recently. So if you're on Instagram, please go and follow me there because I repost pattern tests all the time and you can go and apply on my behalf. So I don't think I showed you guys the finished version of my crocus plant. So here it is. Isn't it beautiful? I think I mentioned that I made it a little bit smaller and I took out some of the repeat rows and some of the increase rows. I really love the color combination that I put together. I think this orchid color is just so perfect for the petals and this stamen on the inside is beautiful as well with this pale yellow color. This pattern was a free one that I found on Instagram, and it was a pretty easy pattern to follow, except for the second part of the stamen, which is this little flower on the inside. I think that it created a little bit of confusion because the designer put AR instead of MR. So if you've been crocheting for a while, you would know that MR is the abbreviation for magic ring, and that's very commonly used. Another variation could be MC, which is magic circle, but this designer put AR, and I was scratching my head for a little while trying to figure out what that was, and I figured that it was probably a typo, but the designer clarified in her caption that AR stands for Amigurumi ring, which is, I guess that works. But for other parts of the pattern, such as the bulb and the pot, the abbreviation used was MR, and in the list of abbreviations, it specified that MR is magic ring. So I'm not sure why the designer would actually switch to AR for the stamen part of the pattern. But anyway, it's not a big deal. It's just something to take note of if you use this pattern. And I think that this second part of the stamen is also confusing because of the way that it's written. So the instructions for row 1 says 2 chain, comma, 5 half double crochet in AR, slip stitch. So personally, what I would do is I would chain 2 first to begin with, and then I was confused by the 5 half double crochet part. But it turns out that what the designer actually means, I think, is to do a magic ring first, and then chain 2, and then put 5 half double crochets. So it's actually 2 chains and 5 half double crochets in the magic ring, and then slip stitch. So that didn't come across super clearly in that part of the pattern, and I thought that that was just something that could be improved. But on the whole, that's something relatively minor, and I really did enjoy using this pattern and making this crocus plant. So definitely go and check out that pattern if you're interested in making one of these beautiful plants, but just make sure that you pay attention to the things that I mentioned for the second part of the stamen. It can actually come out of the pot as well. Can put it back in. There is the option of putting safety eyes in the bulb, and that would make it really cute as well, but I chose not to do that. So it's just a normal plant. The next crochet plant that I'm working on is the Sew Sienna the Succulent by q.squared.crochet. This is where I've gotten up to so far, and it's looking really cute. The next step is to put the leaves on, and I'm excited to do that. I'll probably check back with you guys when it's done. So cute! I'm currently in the middle of adding leaves to the succulent, and the way that you do it is when you're working on the soil, there are some rounds where you only crochet in the back loop, and that leaves the front loop available for you to slip stitch the leaves into. But I think I messed up something somewhere because there are supposed to be 8 leaves on this round, and I've only ended up with 6. I suppose that's not too big a deal, but I must have missed some stitches somewhere. It still looks like it's coming along really well. So this is how my Sienna the Succulent plant turned out. It's not perfect because I messed up some parts of the pattern, but let me just talk you through some of my thoughts while making this pattern. Firstly, you're going to need quite a few stitch markers because as you crochet the sole, you're going to crochet in the back loop only, and you need to use your stitch markers to mark the front loops for when you do the leaves later on. So at least 4 stitch markers. And I was trying to use some of the leftover yarn from other projects to do this plant, so I ended up with a pot that is 2-toned. So this part is made with baby snuggle curry, and then this part I think is toucan sand for the brim of the pot. I think it looks okay, and I'm really happy that I was able to use up some of those tiny bits of yarn to make this project. And lastly, I mentioned earlier that I messed up something with the leaves because I ended up with 6 leaves instead of 8. And then later on, I realized that I was actually crocheting in the wrong part of the soil. So I'm not quite sure where I went wrong with reading the instructions. If you look at the leaves part of the pattern, you're supposed to start from the round with 24 stitches, which I did, until I finished crocheting all the leaves, and then I realized that there was still 1 round of front loops that was there, and that's the round of the soil that has 32 single crochets, and I wonder why you have to do back loop only if you're not going to be putting leaves into that. Anyway, it's all a little bit confusing and I don't think the pattern is perfect, but I do actually like how I improvised and I ended up actually crocheting another round of leaves into round 4 of the shawl as well, just to make sure that those front loops didn't end up naked and empty. So that's what I did to crochet Sienna the Succulent, and I think it turned out okay, but definitely proceed with caution if you're going to check out this pattern. I have already started crocheting my third plant project, and this is going to be Stumpy the Tree Stump by Crochetingbirds, and I'm really excited to see how it turns out because it looks like a super cute amigurumi. I already had to frog part of this because there was one round where I was supposed to crochet back loop only, and in the middle of that round I completely forgot to do that, so I ended up with a situation where half the round was back loop only and then half the round was in normal stitches. So I frogged like 3 rounds worth of stitches. Thank goodness it wasn't more than 3 rounds, and then I redid the whole thing and it's coming along nicely now, and I'm glad that I frogged it because I wouldn't be able to live with that mistake. It was so jarring. So it's coming along nicely and I can't wait to show this to you when it's done because I think Stumpy is going to look really cute. I didn't have a Ribbler account before this, but I signed up for Ribbler just so that I could see this free pattern, and yeah, I'm gonna show him to you when he's done. This is where I've gotten up to with Stumpy, and look at how little of this beige color yarn I had left after finishing the top part. I was actually not too nervous about running out of this yarn because I estimated that I would have enough, and thank goodness, I think this is just nice. It's not too short, so I wasn't panicking. This pattern has been no-sew so far, and the last step is to crochet the leaves, and then it might involve a little bit of sewing for the leaves. Stumpy turned out to be completely no-sew and he is so cute! The designer made Stumpy using thin velvet yarn or milk cotton yarn, and I think that her colors were much lighter than my Stumpy. I was just trying to use whatever colors that I had on hand, so this is the Stumpy that I ended up with. The designer also added blush to Stumpy, but I think blush is not really going to show up very well on this brown color that I used, so it's going to just stay like that. I would recommend that you check out this pattern because it's written very clearly, and if you have never used Ribbler before, it's a chance to hop on there and get started using Ribbler. I'm still in favor of using a PDF because I enjoy being able to just scroll up and down. It's what I'm used to. And with the Ribbler interface, you kind of have to scroll back and forth through the different web pages, which took a little bit more time, and I didn't like that the reference picture wasn't always on the screen for me to look at. So I can't say that I'm a huge fan of Ribbler at the moment, but who knows, I might get used to it if I use it more often. But all that to say that this pattern is definitely worth checking out. The only thing that's missing from the pattern is that it doesn't mention what size of safety eyes to use, and I think that perhaps the designer used a smaller safety eye, so even if they mentioned it, it might not have mattered anyway. I was using baby snuggle yarn and toucan yarn, and the eyes that I use are 8mm eyes, but I think the 6mm ones would have worked perfectly as well. So here are the 3 projects that I've made so far. I've got a crocus plant, a succulent, as well as a tree stump, and I'm not sure what I'm going to make next. So keep watching and you're going to find out. It is now Thursday, and this week of crocheting is turning out to be pretty successful, if I do say so myself. And the next crochet plant that I decided to do is a Hoya Heart plant by Happy Hooks Crochet Co. And here's where I've gotten up to with the plant. I first made the heart, which was a pretty quick and easy make. And then I decided to use a different yarn to make the pot, and that meant I had to kind of fiddle with the pattern a little bit. So if you look at the pattern itself, it might look different from mine because I was experimenting with different yarn kinds. So I first started this pot and it turned out to be too large, so I made a second one. The proportions of this look a little bit better to me, so I'm going to continue with the shawl, and then yeah, I'm gonna show it to you guys when I'm done. And I think for this bigger pot, I'm going to use it to make a different plant, and how nice that I already have the pot made. For both of these pots, I didn't follow the pattern exactly because if you look at the pattern, it tells you to start with a magic ring of 6 single crochets, pretty standard, and then you increase to 12 single crochets, which is also pretty standard. But after that, you increase to 24 single crochets, and that was where my pot started to get very wavy and wonky. So I decided to go with what I traditionally use, which is 6 single crochets, 12 single crochets, and then 18 single crochets instead. So that worked out better for me. So if you try this pattern, and you run into issues with the pot being wavy when you do that increase from 12 to 24 single crochets, maybe just try increasing to 18 instead and see if that works for you. My Hoya Heart plant is done and it's looking pretty cute, but I do have a few thoughts. Starting with my creation, I used 2 different types of yarn for this project. The green heart part is made out of jelly baby yarn. The pot as well as the soil are made of flutterbee yarn, and this is because I'm trying to use up all my yarn and I have quite a lot of flutterbee yarn sitting around unused. And I do like how it turned out, but I just wish that this pink color would have been a brighter pink. It looks quite dull at the moment, and I don't think it would brighten up a space as much as I would like it to, but I think the colors go well together and I do think that it's really cute. As for the pattern, I do like that when I was making the heart, there were lots of pictures to help guide me through the process, but I think the pattern is flawed. For example, in row 8 and row 10, where you have to repeat the single crochet and decrease sequences, and the pattern doesn't tell you that you have to repeat. So I do think you need to have some experience with crocheting amigurumi in order to know what the pattern is supposed to say. And as for the pot, I already mentioned that I didn't follow the pattern because it was turning out a little bit funky. And for the soil, I also did not follow the pattern because I had learned from crocheting Stumpy how to make it no-sew. So what I did was, for the last round of the pot, I crocheted in front loops only, and that allowed me to crochet the soil into the back loops, and then that way I didn't have to sew anything and I wasn't too worried about making sure that the tension and the size was aligned so that it would fit properly. So I ultimately changed up the pattern to suit my own preferences, but I will link the original pattern by Happy Hooks Crochet Co. in the description box below so you can check it out, and of course you can make any modifications to it that you wish to. So I'm pretty happy with my Hoya Heart, and I think that since there is still more time left in this week, tomorrow's Friday, I am going to choose one more plant amigurumi to make, and I haven't chosen it yet, so let's see what I get up to. It is now Friday morning and I literally have to go to work in 5 minutes, so I just thought of filming and quickly letting you guys know what my final plant project is going to be. So I had this pot from earlier when I was making the Hoya plant, and this pot turned out to be too large and I made a second one. So I decided that I needed to turn this into its own plant. So I used the same method as Stumpy to crochet the soil in, and then I found this Dangling Curly Plant pattern. This pattern is really simple because you just start with a chain of whatever length you want, and then you crochet 3 single crochets into every chain. So I ended up with a bunch of kind of longer curls, and then these are a bunch of shorter curls. So when I sew them all into the soil, they're going to be of different lengths, and that makes for kind of a unique plant. I'm thinking of distributing the curls somewhat evenly around the circumference of the pot, and I'm going to be alternating between the shorter and the longer curls. So in the end, it should look something like this. I know it looks really messy at the moment, but you kind of get the idea of what I'm going for. Oh, there's another curl here. I didn't give this pot a face, so it's just going to be a regular plant, and I'm really excited to sew all of those curls in, but that's going to have to wait for this evening because after work, my husband and I are going to be hosting a friend, so we're going to be cooking dinner, and after that we're going to a friend's house to chill out for a bit. So this is going to have to wait for a little bit, but now I have to go and do my makeup and get ready for work and all those good stuff. So I'll see you guys in a little while. It is now Sunday and I just managed to finish the Dangling Curly Plant this morning before heading to church. So here's what it's looking like from all of the different angles. I quite like the finished look of it, and I'm very proud of how I managed to finish up that skein of yarn with exactly enough yarn for the last curl. But I do wish that I had just a little bit more of the yarn so that I could make a few more curls to make the plant look a little more like it's flourishing, because at the moment you can see some of the bald spots on the soil, and it would just be nice to have more curls to cover up all parts of the soil. So there it is, the Dangling Curly Plant, and it is the 5th of the plants that I managed to crochet in the past week. And now I'm going to compare all 5 of the plants that I made from 3 different aspects. The first aspect is time, as in how long it took me to make each of these crochet plants. And just as a disclaimer, I am a relatively slow and steady crocheter, so the length of time that I mentioned in this video may not correspond to how long it will take you to crochet these plants, but I think it will help to give a comparison of how long each plant took me. And coming in at last place is this crocus plant. This took me 5 hours and 15 minutes to make because there are quite a lot of different parts and you would need to sew them together. And the petals and stamen really do take quite a little bit of time to put together. So this was 5 hours and 15 minutes. Tied for 3rd place is Sienna the Succulent and the Dangling Curly Plant. Each of these took me 3 hours and 20 minutes to make. And that's because there are quite a lot of leaves in each of them that will take some time to put together, and then the pot will take some time as well. So right at about 3.5 hours. Coming in at 2nd place is the Hoya Heart plant, and this took me 2 hours and 20 minutes to make because there really aren't that many components to make, and it comes together quite quickly. I think a faster crocheter would be able to make this in maybe an hour or so. I don't know. And the plant that took me the least time to make is Stumpy the Tree Stump. He is a really fast make. Took me an hour and 45 minutes and possibly faster if you crochet faster than me. And I think part of what contributes to him being such a quick make is that he is a no-sew pattern, so he doesn't really take up much of your time at all. The second aspect that I want to compare is the finished look of the crochet plant, as in which crochet plant do I like the most. And unfortunately, coming in at last place is Sienna the Succulent. I think this is probably a bit of a user error on my part because I think the leaves ended up too dense and I don't like how it looks like the pot is too full. If I put it on the surface, it looks like it's going to topple over at any moment because it's very top heavy. So unfortunately, Sienna is coming in at last place, but I do wonder if adding a mouth to the pot might make it cuter. So we'll just have to see if I end up doing that, but sorry, Sienna, you're in the last place. 4th place goes to the Dangling Curly Plant, and as I mentioned earlier, I don't really like that there are bald spots in the soil that are very obvious and visible, and if I had more of the same yarn, I would definitely crochet more curls so that I could add on to the plant and make it look like it's growing better. But if you don't look at the top of the plant, it's really pretty. In 3rd place is the Hoya Heart plant, which is really cute with the face on the pot. I think that what I don't really like about this, and this is my particular product, is that the heart is a little lopsided. I think I didn't sew it on neatly enough and it just looks like the heart's not very symmetrical. So that's something specific to this particular thing that I made, and I really do like the pattern. I also do wish that I had picked a more vibrant color to make the pot because I think this pink color is just a little dull, and that's because of the yarn that I chose. In 2nd place is the Crocus plant, and I really like this because I think it adds a pop of color to the room or the windowsill or wherever you place this. I like that the colors are quite vibrant and yeah, it just looks really pretty as well. And 1st place has to go to Stumpy because he is just too cute, and when I was making this video, I knew that I absolutely wanted to make him. I think he is super unique, super adorable, just so cute with those little bubbles for his hands and feet. So definitely he is the top ranking in terms of the finished look. The 3rd aspect that I want to compare is the pattern in terms of how easy the pattern was to read and to use. And the last place, unfortunately, has to go to Sienna the Succulent. Again, I'm not too sure if it was me misreading or misunderstanding the pattern in some way. So I think the pattern just needs a little bit of tweaking. I don't know what it is, but this pattern gave me the most grief out of the 5 patterns that I tried. Fourth place goes to the Crocus plant, and although I really love the finished look of it, and I think that this pattern is definitely a worthwhile one to try, there was definitely a bit of confusion caused with the stamen part of it. It was resolved relatively quickly and I could kind of understand what the designer was trying to communicate in the pattern, but I think that it definitely needs to be tweaked just ever so slightly in order to be perfect. Third place goes to the Hoya Heart plant, and with this pattern I really appreciated that it included a lot of pictures, but in the pattern itself there were definitely some mistakes, like there were parts when we were supposed to repeat the stitches and that wasn't explicitly stated in the pattern, and you will only know that if you have had some crocheting experience. So this was a good pattern, turned out really cute, I really like it, but the pattern itself is not perfect. Stumpy has been dethroned in this category because he is second place. This pattern is really good, really clear, and the only thing is that you have to sign up for Ribbler in order to be able to use this pattern, so I'm docking some points for that. And first place goes to the Dangling Curly Plant. I need to preface this by saying that I didn't use the pot and the saw part of this pattern, so I can't really explicitly comment on those parts. But the curls are so easy and straightforward to make. As long as you know how to do chains and single crochets, you can make this plant. And it's also so easily customizable because you can crochet the curls in whatever color you want and to whatever length you want. You can crochet as many curls as you want. So I think that this pattern was just really easy to follow. So these are the 5 crochet plans that I made this week, and if any of you have tried out these patterns, I would love to know your experience with them. Please comment below and let me know if you encountered any of the same issues that I did with some of these patterns. Thank you for hanging out with me, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!